We're gonna, you're all set?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, band edge is the topic of discussion today. And I think it's important that it's a brush up for people who don't get it, and also for those who are new into ham radio to understand what the band edge is. And this may end up being one of the shortest discussions ever, but we'll get to it. When the couple of things to keep in mind, you know, if your upper limit on 20 meters is 14,350 and it's 7.3 in 40 meters. Now, does that mean that you can park your dial right on 7.3 and talk to people? On 40 meters, you can. 40 meters, you can. Can you do it on 14,350? Can you park it on the upper edge and start talking to people? You can do it, but you'd be out of band. The reason for that is kind of a LSD is not a drug they took in the 60s. It's something different. Lower sideband. This one's upper sideband.
It's USB brand.
So when you're being legal and using your radio legal and not plugging your audio into the back end of your radio where you bypass all the filtering, you're limiting your audio bandwidth to roughly 2.5, I still call it kilocycles. Kilohertz for those of you listening at home. But your bandwidth of your transmitted signal should be 2.5 kilohertz. And that's because the radio, the manufacturers, by the rules that are involved there in making radios, they had to limit the bandwidth of it to that. But there are some people who decide, I'd really like my radio to be high fidelity. So they either clip all that circuitry out or they find a way into the audio through the back of the radio. And they hook up all these really cool things to them, like compressors, limiters, equalizers, and so forth, and have a rack of equipment so they can sound like an FM broadcast channel in single sideband. Well, what that does is it increases this figure by the highest frequency being passed. So if you're limiting your audio that you're passing to 2.5 kilohertz, that's how wide that signal is going to be impressed on your carrier. And if you raise that to, okay, 20 kc, we'll use that as an extreme example. That's going to be about that wide. You're going to be covering most of the band. So you got people who are trying to carry on a conversation 3 kilohertz away. Typically 3 kilohertz away is how far away you can get on any given frequency and be away from somebody else. That's why that is important. When you bypass it, you're wide and you're taking up the whole thing. So if somebody's going to come on and they're going to say, hey, buddy, you're a little wide, you're interfering with our conversation down below. And if you're a good ham, you're going to cuss at them and say, what's wrong with the way I sound? I sound really good, don't I? No, you might sound good, but I won't use any names. So you...
I stopped doing that.
Oh, you stopped doing it, okay. Now, so that's why you have to do that. Now, why is it different on lower sideband and upper sideband? So, okay, you have a broadcasted signal. Well, we don't broadcast on ham radio, but I think you get the idea. When this is a spectrum analyzer display, and if you don't understand spectrum analyzer, look them up. They're really cool. I have one. They're fun to play with, but I use them in the work too. If you're transmitting on your upper sideband, if your radio is working properly, there will be nothing below the carrier. This will be the carrier. And anything to the bottom end of it, if you're on upper sideband, is gone. The lower side is gone. Your upper sideband, you're going to have information there, and that's your intelligibility, or I sometimes use intelligibility a little loosely when it comes to some ham operators, but you know what I mean. It's your signal that you're working with. Now that, if you were to park that right here, you're out of band. Your intelligibility is out of band. But if you come down 3 kilohertz below. And there is a net that occurs every day at 3 kilohertz below the top end. They're calling themselves, I think, the top end something or other. One of our local guys, Lee Ash, who has gone now, but he was always getting me on there. When I was in Florida, he would call me to get on that net. And I could hear him fine, but I couldn't hear the local people around me because all this was originating in Florida somewhere. So that's your top of the band on upper sideband. So now if you come down to 40 meters, you're going to have the same thing going on with your spectrum analyzer. And instead of your intelligibility being above it, since you're on lower sideband, it's all going to be on the lower part of the signal. So now that means, since all of your intelligibility is that way, you could theoretically park your dial on 7.3 and talk there. Would I do it? Probably not, because I'm a little strict about being on the edge. Spent most of my life on the edge, but that's a different story. This is how you keep yourself from getting an official observer notice by being out of band. Now here comes a contest. And here comes a contest, and what's the lower end of 40 for a general? It's 7.175, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm out of whatever. Okay, suppose we're down here at that. You're hearing this guy who's parked right on 175, and in the heat of the moment, oh, thank you. So you're down here in the heat of the moment, you hear him, and he's somewhere you really need his card. So you're thinking, I'll just take a chance, right, Charlie? So you take a chance, and then you start calling the guy, and of course you're down here below the frequency. Instead of being on 175, you're 2.5 kilohertz or 3 kilohertz below it because of the nature of the way the radio is designed. And Charlie gets a letter in the mail that says, you were out of band. I know this is just, that didn't happen, did it?
No.
Okay, good. So that's how that would happen.
Not yet.
Not yet. What if you're using FM or AM? Well, let's go with AM because that's what we've used mostly on 40 and 20. I don't imagine that in most of the VHF stuff that you all use, or UHF, you're channelized and the radio is manufactured to cover all these possibilities. But FM is a bit wider, and you won't see it so much on 40 and 20, but you will see AM. And yours instead of now being on only one side of the carrier, you're of course on two sides of the carrier with your intelligibility. So on 40 and 20 both, or no matter what frequency you're on, this is going to be, again, if you're on 7.3 and you think you can do it on single sideband, although I said I wouldn't, and you were up here, this is great color codes, that way I can cover AM and FM. So anyway, you would have your signal coming over, and now you're out of band because you're extending off of your ham band. So that's, now is there any questions so far? Yes.
Is there a certain figure that you would normally choose? Like 14,350, 14,25, 14,20, that you would stay away from the guy next to you?
Well, there are lots of them. Now, you bring up 14.3, that's the Maritime Mobile.
Well, I meant, I was using your number, I was
Yeah.
taking percentages down.
Well, when you're on it, you got to remember that every 3 kilohertz is going to be a conversation somewhere. And on 40 meters, there's almost a band plan, but it's not really. And it starts over at like East Cars at 7.255. This one's 100. And you'll find that every 3 kilohertz up and every 3 kilohertz down from that frequency, you're gonna find another net. Although there is one that falls in the middle of east cars and south cars at about 2.5 kilohertz below, and that's from out in the Midwest somewhere. It was never an issue before. The way the propagation is now, it's a big issue because you're on east cars or south cars and you're hearing these people. But it's mostly when you're on east cars because, again, here they are and their upper sideband is coming into you. That's why. But I would stay away from some of the main nets when you're on there. Now we've mentioned that, like the east cars, mid cars, south cars, and all of those are well documented. You can find them everywhere, and I would stay clear. And then also on, well, I did put that in the wrong place, didn't I? That's actually for down here at 140, but up here then you have 7.3 or 14.3. That's a well-known maritime mobile net, but I'd stay clear of that. If that's kind of what you meant, but.
Well, I just meant if somebody was there, how far away would you normally pick a channel? Because when they're doing
3 kilohertz away is a rule of thumb.
right, when they're doing
3 kilohertz.
contests,
Yeah,
you have trouble finding a
3 kc away. Yeah, I'm old. They're kcs too. So on a contest, you're going to be hard pressed to find a clear spot anywhere, and that's going to always happen.
Right.
That you're going to find you're stepping on people.
A lot of people in contests will go to 1.5 kilohertz and then narrow their transmit band.
Yeah, you can on the modern radios, but my Kenwood 830S doesn't quite handle it that way. But now I do have some new modern stuff. What did I get from you? Yaesu
450D.
450D. I bet that would let me do it. In my car, the 706, I can skew off somewhat on the IF shift, and I can get away from some of them, and I do that when I'm working mid cars from the end of car or the south car, east cars. I can get the mid cars people away from me that way. Any other thoughts, questions, or whatever? Now, for those of you who come in late, you'll be able to see this in the video. That'll be on our website when we're all done here. So that's basically the extent of what I wanted to cover. Band edges in a pure and simple way. And the other thing is stay away from high fidelity audio in your radios. Don't do it because you're going to splatter everywhere. And if you think it's bad, you know, like if you are here on, on 265 or 255 and up here at 7258, that's 3 kc above, and you're running your high fidelity audio because you really sound cool. It's going to be up here, and you're going to splatter them out. So then their net control is going to come down and tell you you're wide, buddy. You need to take care of it, and then you can yell at it because you're right. No, you can't yell at it because you're wrong.
No, you put your 5 kW up and the heck with him. And now he's getting bothered.
Get that Henry amp on there and crank that sucker up. We know a guy that did that. Oh, he's no longer with us either. See what that stuff gets you? But, all right, any other comments, questions?
Where would you go at the top of 40 meters? How, like 7299?
At the top of what?
70 meters, yeah.
3 kilohertz down.
You know, I mean, no, I mean, if there was somebody, 3 kilo, would you try to transmit at 7.299 lower sideband?
You can do that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
because you're not gonna, even a little splatter is not gonna take you out of the band.
No, because if your radio is still factory fresh and not modified, you're 2.5 kilohertz away. But there was a local guy, and I'd run into him at sales and Hamfest and all that. And he'd come up and introduce me. He says, "You remember me? I'm the guy you hate because my audio is wide." And then he tried to do this stuff on the ham repeaters, and you just can't go wide audio on an FM repeater. It's going to shut you down. but he thought he was righteous. And when Riley Hollingsworth was here one time, when he was the enforcer, he needed an outfit with a cape. But anyway, he was the enforcer for ham radio. And he told us what he would tell them, and he'd give them a citation. He said, if you would like to have high fidelity audio, we got a great way to do it. Apply for an FM broadcast license. And I don't think they did it.
You see how Raleigh's new position.
No.
He is taking over the ARRL's new program that's replacing the OO.
Oh, cool.
He's gonna be the guru organizing that whole thing.
He can get a cape now.
Yes, he can.
Yeah. All right, that's all I got. Is there anything else that anybody wants to comment on? No? Well, thanks for your kind attention. And you can find us on the YouTube channel and on w3uu.org after I edit it together. You
Ro-
can-
Roger that.